that.
Oh, I never get any notifications from
Hearing,
LinkedIn.
we are going to start the Gillmor gang.
Isn't that sad that Brent never gets any notifications?
I get it on Facebook, but I don't get it on LinkedIn Live. It's like,
Are we live on LinkedIn? You're checking, right?
yeah, I'm checking right now.
Okay.
We're okay on Facebook, though.
I got a Facebook notification. We're live on Facebook. Do we know?
Not seeing it on LinkedIn yet.
How about
previously
Twitter? Anyone want to check our Twitter?
I'm not checking because I'm in a hotel on probably flaky bandwidth.
Okay.
That's a great name for a band.
Flaky bandwidth.
Flaky bandwidth.
So far, I've heard flaky bandwidth and below the fold. I like those two for.
Yeah, below the fold's good. Above the fold's good too.
Okay.
I posted a picture of a cat that was on just sort of hanging out over a curb on a street, and the headline was Dolly's cat. And somebody sent me a note saying, that's a good name for a band.
You know, I think any two words become a good name for the world, for a band.
So
For example, guest directory.
Right?
Nothing.
Guest directory. I like that.
Okay.
Is that that's a band?
All right. Well,
Guest directory.
we
I don't see it on LinkedIn.
can't fix it right now, so we'll have to go in and see what LinkedIn's done again.
I know what it'll be. Restream keeps wanting to re-verify LinkedIn every so often. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Is that that's not a quick check, a quick fix though, is it?
No,
Not
we'd
really.
have to restart the stream and everything.
Okay.
Having first of all gone there.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, we places everybody to mute your phones. I'm gonna mute my phone right now. Okay, get this out of the way. Get that out of the way.
That's probably a good name for a band as well. Mutant Phones.
Out of the way. I like out of the way. That's
I did not say mutant phones.
mutant phones.
Okay. All right, and those. All right, Steve. I'm all ready. You all ready for the countdown?
Mm.
Oh, you're in charge. Do it.
How did that? He says you're in charge, then he says do it. It's like a command.
Yeah. I'm in charge. I don't know why I'm in
Yeah.
charge today.
That's a Nazi
You have
moron.
to say
Do you
the
mean
certain
Did
words.
you want me to introduce the show instead of you?
No, just
Okay. All right. Here we go.
done
Yeah.
every week for 1,000 years.
That's not true. We didn't do a show last week.
Mute is off, and we will go. In three,
What's going on with my
one,
VPN?
and
Okay, take two.
yep.
Let's
All right.
let's have everybody quiet.
Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. Welcome to from right next to me, Tina Gillmor.
I wasn't ready for that.
Also in California is Keith Cheer.
No, he's not in California.
Well,
Well, in my head,
right
I'm
here in California, I can see him.
No,
My body is in Budapest, Hungary, where I've been since Thursday.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
You're up, Brent. What was that joke?
about
Can't
being
tell it
hungry.
now. It's over with.
Okay.
But he did want to have a
I-
bite to eat. How about that?
I've been hearing some really, really kind of jokes you can't tell on air this weekend because I've been at a friend's 75th birthday, and 75-year-olds still tell jokes they're not allowed to tell on air.
I'll let you know soon.
Yeah, I
Run
think
with
Bill,
it. Keith.
Bill
Go
Murray
ahead.
found that out this week.
Yeah, didn't he?
Let's see. Is there anybody else who wants to be introduced?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't care.
All right. So what's
Well, let's introduce everybody.
oh all right. Brent Leary is in the Atlanta, Georgia area.
Hi, Brent.
Hello. Yeah, I was waiting for a question or something. It was just like a statement. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
It's just a
There you
lower
go.
third
How
filler.
how you doing, Brent?
I'm actually doing pretty good.
Okay.
Also joining us from the framework of Massachusetts is Dennis Pomerant.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here after our hiatus. Looking forward to a wonderful conversation.
Oh, I thought you were going to say we're looking forward to another hiatus.
Or a loatus.
I'm looking forward to lunch, actually.
Wow, Brent, you're like on.
There's
Boom, boom.
Hungry Joe
Brent, ask
3.
me. I'm hungry.
Brent, you're on fire tonight, man. You're
I'm
on
in
fire.
fuego. In fuego.
The guy in the upper right corner of my screen is in London, so it must be tonight that he's talking about. Welcome,
Tierra-
Frank Rodas.
We're here in Tierra del Fuego.
Is this a fire sign?
Yes,
Oh.
it is. That was it.
See,
No
I didn't
more.
know it was.
I'm
Got
I
done.
just
his
thought he was-
Spanish guitar on the wall.
I do. That is a Spanish guitar. In
I
fact,
thought it was your audition for CNN plus plus.
Ooh.
it's that CNN minus is what it is.
Not yet. Oh, wait, it is. It's gone already,
Yeah,
right?
it's official. Yeah.
This is gone before it ever
Yeah.
got here.
Wow.
And last but certainly not least is Michael Markman.
How do you do? Frank, could you honor us with a few words in Turkish?
No.
Oh, okay. I was setting you up with a fire
Yeah,
sign.
that's the first
Great.
record. That's the one that nobody has any memory of.
Uh-oh.
Owl,
Fire sign reference?
Yeah,
coffee.
Oh no.
It's the one that has Beat
Happy?
Reaper on it, which
Oh,
we've
gosh.
been living in the present with.
My goodness, I've stumped
Yeah,
Frank.
you stumped me. I'm stumped. And
Oh.
now I'm going to have to go find it online and listen to the whole thing
Yes, you
tonight.
will.
And I will then find out what I found out the last time I listened to one of them recently, not stoned, was they weren't nearly as funny.
Wow.
Oh, well,
I didn't say they weren't funny,
I
but
know,
they weren't
look, nothing is nearly as funny. You
wasn't
know,
quite as funny.
A ride on the subway isn't nearly as funny
No.
if you're not stoned.
Wait till the diehard fire sign fans actually figure out that there's always some fire sign reference in this show. They should.
Yeah, well, they
They
can
should
just
be
listen
lining
and
it.
they'll know that.
Well,
We always label them.
Oh, I,
We,
have to let them know.
I thought you guys
we
were
never
the
let
last
them
ones
go by
left.
unlabeled.
So if any of you know the pre-Enlightenment Dutch painter called Bosch, I went to an
Yes.
exhibition there yesterday.
Hieronymus.
And
There's
what
a
was it?
there's a reboot of that series.
Yeah, it starts on the 6th.
I was waiting for somebody
Excellent.
to throw that out
So
there.
my very cultured German friend said to me, "We're going to go to the Bosch exhibition," and I said, "Well, why do we want to go and look at washing machines and dishwashers?"
I have a Bosch
then,
toaster.
Because
But then
it's
I
a
got
garden
there,
of earthly
I got there.
delights.
When I got there, you realize where Monty Python's animations come from, because Bosch is basically stylistically Monty Python animations. They must have stolen it completely. So things live on and take new forms, including fire sign.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think we've just stated why we should not have too long of hiatuses.
Yeah.
How come? Explain, please.
Well, let's keep going.
Was this just 1 week too long for you, Brian?
You know what? Honestly, during this whole hiatus, I have been thoroughly entertained by the back and forth on the Gillmor Gang Telegram page, which is t.me/ Gillmor gang.
Okay.
And on the whole Twitter thing. You guys have kept me very entertained, and I have pretty much stayed out of it, except for one item that I posted that was immediately trashed as bad journalism. But
Guilty as charged.
yeah, hey, I didn't write it, so
I know.
there you go.
Well,
There's my segue. That should have. I'm done. I'm listening now. Brent and I are going to lay back and listen.
Yes.
Well,
I'm not
yeah.
even convinced. I'm not convinced we should talk about it, to be honest, because I feel as if it's become a way too important focus when actually it's mainly a sideshow to the main event. And it's easy for us all, especially when we're passionate, to get, to deep dive down into how we see it through our own eyes.
Speak for yourself, please.
Well, it's easy for me to do that.
I think he is.
But when I do it, when I come up for air, I think, this really isn't one of the more important things that's going on right now.
Well, that's a good attempt at starting the conversation, but I'm not going for it. There was
good.
a
We won't
post,
start the conversation. Let's just.
yeah, there was a post in other news. There was a post in t.me/Gillmor gang.
Where
by,
was that?
I think Keith here today, which is a Substack article, which has the wonderful advantage of in the mid-sentence or at the end of a paragraph, maybe going to the paywall. So I'm not sure. Can you describe the rest of that article so that we understand why you posted it?
Well, I posted it firstly because it came from Matt Taibbi, who I think is a very intelligent person. And I don't think particularly ideologically motivated. I think he's partly funny, partly observer, partly educated observer. And I do think that the climate we're in, Elon Musk is in a very weak situation, when you consider what people think about what he's doing. And Taibbi basically said the problem is the reaction to Musk, not Musk, and went in quite a lot of depth as to why he believes that. And I thought it was thoughtful. It referenced lots of different people, so it was well researched. And it tried to get beyond what Musk is doing to what society should be doing, and didn't get to, use Musk as a foil for a broader conversation, which I think is actually the most important thing to do.
Okay, so my question was, what happens after the sentence? That's one version of history. I remember another.
If I break his paywall, am I going to get in trouble?
No, you can say anything you want about what you've read.
You can paraphrase.
That's
But
correct.
You can summarize.
What he basically does is he shows how progressively we have narrowed the scope of conversation to what is considered acceptable to various curators or mentors or judges. And the normal state of affairs where human beings are allowed to have ideas and say what they think, free of interference from others, as no longer exists. And so what he remembers is a time when even offensive opinions, even illegal opinions, were left to the law to judge, not us, in terms of whether they're allowed to be there or not. And so it's basically about who makes the decisions about what is and is not publishable.
Now, this is after it goes to the paywall.
Yeah, and I'm paraphrasing.
Everything you said, I gleaned from the part that is not on the paywall. So is there something he says after?
Well, he's a writer that uses references and examples, so it's full of, not major points, but illustrations of points.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and the free speech issue set aside for a moment. Not everyone would hit the paywall. It would be publishers who use or retweet that might be hit by the paywall. Is that
No,
did I miss something?
No, if you're not a subscriber to a Substack, then there is certain information where you can basically draw a line at the bottom of the free available information. And if you're not a subscriber, you don't see it. Either in the email that is sent out or in the web page that is posted. So what I'm trying to get at is an answer to the question of why post something that is essentially a commercial for this author.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, that's part of the beauty of Substack. The publisher gets to decide what to share in the open and what to only show to people who are paying. Matt Taibbi, you pay him $50 a year if you want to read everything. And I
gather you do.
And I do. And the line between what anyone can see and what people are paying can see is known as the paywall. So that line can be put anywhere by the author in their text. And some people use it to like a funnel. You put stuff at the top, which is a teaser that's tasty enough to make you want to go further. And Substack, through that mechanism, is letting people build paying audiences, which is somewhat of a side issue, but it is part of what makes Substack interesting.
Okay, so
a lot of people are doing that. I think isn't that exactly the same model that for example the Wrap Pro uses?
Yeah, and
yeah, it's not a particularly new model. It even has a snappy name. They call it freemium.
In your newsletter, Frank, when I see the Wrap Pro, is that what it's called?
Yeah. You just don't open it, right?
I don't open it because I'm going to get even more blurry vision after about 30 seconds. Well, it goes blurred and you can't read it, and there's no way.
But then it pops up with a commercial to buy the Wrap Pro,
right?
On the other side of the paywall.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
But back to the main meat of it. It's a very long article, by the way. So about 1/10 or less of it is above the paywall. And it's a long history of everyone who tried to curtail what was put on Twitter. It looks at the Democrats. It looks at it looks at a whole history, including the executive Twitter changing from originally being not wanting to interfere at all to really interfering even when they're not being asked to. So it's like a whole history of how we got to where we are to today.
So from our perspective, since we are the admins of the Gillmor Gang Telegram feed, what are we doing here? Are we providing a service, or are we shilling for an author, or are we suggesting that there might be some value that the author hasn't really explained because the author just drops off a cliff there at some point?
No, that's my fault, because I could read it, I actually wasn't aware it was behind a paywall. So I just posted it because it was interesting. And then afterwards, I realized it was behind it, that it only went so far unless you were logged in, because I'd opened it in my other browser where I wasn't logged in, and I saw that.
The reason I ask is that there are, I've been, living in the behind the paywall with one author, which is Ben Thompson, a feed called Stratechery. And I never, I was immune, I thought, to the blandishments of you know, if you sign up on one, then you're going to sign up on HBO minus, and you know, there's no end to it. So however, he got into what he does is he tells you the truth, which is he puts a list of daily updates in the clear so that everybody can see it. And he started talking about, I forget whether it was about Twitter, this, you know, pre-Musk, or in general, he started pointing at things. Oh no, it was about Substack and Substack's improvements on their platform and what they're trying to do. And he went through a streak of about a week of saying, you know, Substack this, Substack that, you know. And eventually I said, okay, how much is it? It's $12 a month. Okay. I could have signed up for a year for $10 a month, but I signed up for 1 month at $12. I figure I can find out. Now I'm in there. It's the only thing I read. His commentary, I find, you know, interesting, but not as valuable as what he does on a daily basis, and how it reacts to what's going on, informs what's going on, continues what's going on. It's a very proactive thing that this guy's doing, and he's very smart. And I've learned a lot, because once you sign up for behind a paywall, you can go back and read all the previous stuff that it wasn't available to you. And I've been doing that, you know, for days now. I mean, I've consumed almost a book of this guy's insights, and it's phenomenal. So to me, that's what we're really talking about here. It's not about the details of arguments on one side or another.
I think if you compare Substack to Twitter as a platform for thoughtful interaction, and Stratechery isn't on Substack, but he's got his own kind of equivalent of it. That's very similar in how
Stratechery. What?
Stratechery, whatever you
Yeah,
call it.
yeah. It's a play on the George W. Bush, or no, the original George Bush, and how.
Teachery.
Yeah, no, it is George W. Bush, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to stick with the Americanism, is what I'm
George
saying.
Senior.
Yeah. Well, if you fool me a first time, you know, shame on you. If you fool me, you know, you'll never fool me again.
That's true.
Pretty good.
Okay,
So
cool
did
again.
anyone come across a story that seemed to sort of come and go, where Musk had talked about putting up a paywall on Twitter?
Not a paywall, but
Moving to a subscription model, yes.
Yeah, but not. Well, I don't. That's kind of what I was talking about when I mentioned it wouldn't be a subscription for Twitter, but it would be something that a publisher would have to pay in order to use a tweet.
Yes, there's a comment that he made over the weekend. Specifically, what he's talking about is verified users. That one of the ideas that he has for extending the Twitter Blue subscription service, which already
checkmark.
Yes, is to if somebody checkmarked, and by the implication there being celebrity or politician, extremely well known. This is what he suggested, and
Or me.
Well, and not me. I'm not famous enough to have a verified name, even though there's nobody on earth.
Keep going and tell me
Gillmor
I'll get
did.
paid if that works. Keep going and tell me that I would get paid if that works. Then I'm happy.
Hang in, Frank. We'll find out. but what his announcement is that he's considering quoting somebody, a tweet, as them Twitter charging a fee for that. And the only somebodies that he's suggesting are civilians with celebrity status, which I first of all, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think that it starts to set up some of the dynamic of how retweets and at mentions took over the Twitter platform and made it what it is today.
Can I ask a clarification? How does the money flow? From who to whom?
From the publisher of the tweet, they pay Twitter.
So every time the tweet is forwarded, the publisher is charged.
He's spitballing here. We don't know what the details are, but I've given you what I consider to be the germane information, which is that the status of verified is how they would monetize this.
I must say, given the size of his following and the popularity of his tweets, he's setting himself up to pay a lot of money in, even after he buys it.
Yeah, 44 billion.
No, even after the 44 billion.
Yeah, but if he's in charge, he can prorate it.
Oh, I see.
Well, it's certainly a way to generate to increase revenue.
But does anyone yet take seriously anything he's saying? Because I think he's doing exactly what Steve said, which is spitballing, and he's a mischievous teenager.
I'm not implying that using the word spitballing that's disingenuous of him. I think he's serious about this. Well,
yeah, but he's not. He hasn't got any commitment to any specific set of things yet. I don't think. I think he's first act of putting in the bid. His first act of buying the shares, and then the second act of the board thing, and then the third act of buying the whole thing, which we did prefigure that was where he was going to have to go the whole way.
But in the meantime, it sounds like he's running a campaign for class president. And here are all the things I'm going to do. It's like we don't have to vote him in if he's buying it.
Yeah. Well, so why do that?
He has to have some traction, or else he's going to lose, a key part of his audience.
And I'm not.
This is all about. This is not a zero-sum game. This is like a subtractive game that he's entering into to try and keep what he's got going already for free.
Well, let's do a vote. Who thinks he'll actually own Twitter by, let's say, October? They're saying would be the latest. Who thinks he actually will follow through and own it?
Me.
Well, what's the process?
Well, let's give him his vote first.
Hang on. What's the process of owning it at this point?
The process is well, there's two sides to it: the seller side and the buyer side. The seller side is kind of done with its process. It wants the money, so that seller side is done. The buyer side is, do I still want to buy it once I look inside the books and under the covers?
Okay, but I want the vote, and then you can talk about this.
I wanted to understand what the steps were.
I understand,
because that sort of indicates how long of time this might take. So if there's lots of steps, and
he said October.
They reckon October-ish would be reasonable.
I vote yes. Anybody else, please?
I think
I vote yes.
Okay, Frank. Michael?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Dennis?
I'm going to say no as well.
Brent?
If I had to say right now, I'm thinking I'm leaning no.
Okay, so what?
And Keith, what did you say?
Well, I'm a contrarian. I was going to vote no if I voted first, but now they've all said no. I'm thinking about it.
Oh man, that's so you.
Okay, but
troll.
No,
not a successful evasion. Please answer.
I definitely think it's in the air, and I'm going to say no, but it's a close call. But I'm going to say no.
Okay, so all the
And
no's
Tina,
is that,
what's your vote?
well, I mean, I asked what the criteria was and that was kind of vague, and October sounded okay to me to figure out whether, to look in the books and see
Uh-huh.
if you still want to buy it. So
And so,
so if it's going to be bought, I said yes by October.
okay, excellent. So we've got one, Frank is two. Anybody else?
One what?
It's
I'm,
four,
I'm,
three.
look,
I'm a
I'm
yes.
yes. There are
It's four
three
no's
yes.
and three yeses.
Okay, thank you. Okay, continue.
So, oh, Tina, continue. Okay, go on.
Two so's.
Go ahead. No, I wasn't going to say anything.
So the no's edged it, but so now let's just say, okay, so what is the lack of substance that leads four intelligent people to vote no? What is going on?
Does anybody want to represent the no side?
Yeah,
No.
I think the no side has to do
I
with,
couldn't help it.
I think the no side has a lot to do with where he's getting the money from. And some of the money he's getting by selling Tesla stock. Some of the money he's getting by margining Tesla stock. So he's putting Tesla and his own personal fortune at great risk. This is a much more leveraged buyout than usual, than typical. And it's not clear yet that he can increase the revenues of this service enough to make the numbers pan out.
So
I mean, he may
hang
still
on.
do it as a vanity project.
Hang on.
He seems very much to be doing it for the attention.
But see,
So
I think that's
I don't
that's
see how he
Here's
gets
some
it all
facts.
to solve.
Here's some facts. In 2018, his fortune was estimated at around, it was under 20 billion. Today, his fortune is estimated at 270 billion.
Yeah.
So do you think that Twitter might have something to do with that?
Oh, absolutely. He's been using Twitter. Whoa, sorry, I made a noise. He's been using Twitter as a marketing vehicle. I think second only to Trump, he's been able to use Twitter to get attention, to be outrageous, to get people to interact with him by saying outrageous things. He is, in addition to being a remarkably successful business innovator, he's also a first-class troll. He's got great skills at it.
I actually think, even though I voted yes, that on the no side, what would be the reason for the no side would be Musk himself.
This is classic Frank, by the way.
Well, look, I'm right there on the yes side, but I'm saying if I'm giving my opinion of what the no side could be, and I think it would be Musk himself.
So I don't understand the representation of the no side in your answer.
No, it's
Michael's
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah,
because
so-
I don't want to have to explain mine.
So I think the money is kind of done. He went to Morgan Stanley and he has sold now apparently $8 billion of Tesla stock, which is more than the cash he has to put up. It is leverage, as Michael said. But I believe Tesla is going from strength to strength. Only macroeconomic things will constrain it, which they will a bit, but Tesla's not going anywhere bad. And so I think it won't be the money that stops him. I think it will be his own. I think he might exhaust the fun he's having with the stage it's currently in, get to the point where the trouble is greater than the fun.
There you go. That's what I meant.
No, it must be really, it must be very, very much fun to go from 18 or 19 to 270 billion. I think he's having a lot of fun.
That's what I said, but I think that
No, you're saying that you're talking about some sort of observation of his mental state and reasons that have little to do with economics. And I would say,
oh yeah, I am. I mean, I think he thinks about money almost none of the time. I don't think money's even in his head. I think he's a person driven by beliefs, outcomes, passions. And I think that nothing related to money would sway him one side or the other, as long as he still retained those outcomes, beliefs, and passions. And he's, by the way, lost his fortune twice in his career. Every time he started a new company, he almost went broke, and he spent every single penny he's got. So he's a risk taker. He's not money sensitive at all.
That's true.
Like, isn't there still a
Third
possibility?
time's the charm.
Isn't there still a possibility that he's going to be bringing in
I just
other
got that.
investors into this deal?
Yes, there's a
It-
possibility.
It sounds like there's a lot of time between now and October to do that. And you know, looking through the books, looking at the company, looking at the history, really analyzing it, he might, you know, formulate a lot of whys that other investors should come in. He might be formulating what he really wants to do with it, and making a you know, not just, you know, throwing out idea, you know, a top of the head ideas on Twitter, but actually looking at ways to, you know, raise the revenues and sort of change Twitter into a more powerful sort of situation. I mean, you know, the guy's obviously a smart guy. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We've seen him do some pretty incredible things, and in the land of Silicon Valley, where sometimes there's a lot of talk and you know, people, I don't know, churn out another food delivery app or something like that. Elon Musk has really, you know, made substantial tracks in this world. So, but
Well, I agree, but you know, the areas where the areas where he has been very successful are in areas that he saw an idea for something that didn't quite exist, that a lot of people saw, and he was very good at putting together the resources to bring that idea into fruition. So, you know, electric cars go back over a century. He was able to define an electric car product and put it together in a way that nobody had previously done. And it's not saying he invented it all, but as an investor and as a visionary, he was able to bring together the team that could define a world-defining product.
Well, you know, Michael,
and it's also, you know, it's also
Michael,
the case.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you worked for Steve Jobs,
right?
Isn't there a continuum there?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I worked for a couple of billionaire entrepreneurs. One was Steve Jobs, one was Paul Allen. Steve and I think Elon Tesla both have a great sense of product and creating something that almost exists, that a lot of people are dabbling in, and putting it together in a way that excites the market, that people say, that's exactly the way it should be done. And he's been fantastic at doing that with Tesla and some of his other more infrastructure ideas, like the rockets and the tunnels and Starlink are similar, very much like Steve Jobs. On the other hand, Paul Allen vaguely saw these ideas and never quite had the knack of putting together a product with a set of features and costs and prices that would excite the market. I mean, he made a huge fortune in co-founding Microsoft, and then he basically was a hobbyist for the rest of his career.
Yeah, he has a great guitar collection.
Well, if you go back,
absolutely. You know, I mean, he did remarkable things, but he was not a product genius. He never had that sense of, if I can put this set of capabilities together and package it and put it out there at this cost and be able to charge this price, people will flock to it. He's never been able to do that.
Well,
Michael, I was going to say,
Michael, I think you're also bringing up something really interesting, which is that Elon has nurtured companies from the ground up, you know, from inception outward.
Not Tesla. He came into Tesla as an investor.
Yeah, yes, but close to the ground up. Tesla was not Tesla pre-Elon was not Tesla post-Elon.
Okay. Twitter has been alive for when did it
15
start?
years or so, is it now?
Yeah, 2007, I think.
07, something like that. And it's got a long history. It's very it's in our culture now. How easy is it for someone, or how hard is it for someone to jump in at this point when something is very sort of set, and then take over and start to rework something? Because that to me seems like a very different way of thinking.
I agree with that, Tina. I think that's an important point. Twitter as a business is not spectacularly successful. Twitter as a product and as a cultural force is, and it is well defined. And the people who use it and employ it know what they have and know the value they get out of it. It's not making a lot of money. Now, if you tinker with it too much to turn it into a money-making proposition, you may be eroding some of the key values that the users and the tweeters find in it today. Maybe you won't, but I mean, in the entire history of Twitter's existence, a whole bunch of social media platforms have come along and had better business propositions, had better business models. So TikTok came along, YouTube became a very lucrative business deal.
Instagram,
Twitch, Instagram, a lot of them have solved the business project. But people using Instagram find that the changes that Facebook has made to it make the product less attractive. It's become a much different product than it was at the time that Facebook bought it, and it is more successful as a business product. But a lot of users are finding it less enjoyable. And I wonder if transforming Twitter into a good business model will erode it.
I don't
So I think you're missing a point, and the point.
I don't. Go ahead,
Dennis hasn't said a word. I'd like to hear this one.
Yeah.
I think this requires us to find the right metaphor. I don't think that's the metaphor. The metaphor, I think, is cloud computing. 20 years ago, everything was install it, run it yourselves, and good luck. Today, you almost don't install software. Everything is off the cloud. That was not an invention of software. It was a major rethink of the software delivery system. So I'm willing, I don't like Elon Musk, but I'm willing to do two things. Number one, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to invent something about the delivery / business model that we haven't thought of. And number two, I'm willing to buy one of his cars.
Still, I mean, I saw you were musing about maybe unbuying it.
I was, until delivery. I've got
look,
that
from most users, almost all the users say it's a great product. Nobody says that the Tesla cars stink. People rave about them.
I've heard a few people say that.
Well, I say almost everyone. Yeah,
No, there are some reviews.
Nothing will please everyone, but by and large, people are very happy with that product.
There are reviews that say this or that could be better, but that's not a ringing rebuke.
Yeah, you just got to please yourself.
You always have another version on the development list, and then you'll make it. Maybe it'll be an over-the-air update. So I think the metaphor is look at Mark Benioff and what he did with cloud computing beginning 22 years ago.
Well, that relates to two things. Firstly, the discussion about who is Musk career-wise. And if you go back to Zip2, which was his first startup, which he sold to Compaq for $300 million. And then he did PayPal, which of course he made out with. And then he did, he, as Steve said, invested in Tesla at the A round, became chairman of the board, and eventually got very deeply involved. It was kind of a turnaround, Tina, to your point, because the Roadster wasn't really working. And as an engineer, he got involved and he did kind of turn it around. He's definitely done that with SpaceX, where the first 3 rockets didn't work. And so he became chief engineer, and the 4th one did. So he does have a history of solving problems for businesses that already exist and helping give birth to the next stage of them. So I think he is that. I don't think, in the case of Twitter at least, that he is revenue focused. In fact, I think he might even be prepared to switch off all advertising and go to 0 revenue in order to get it to be what Jack Dorsey described last week as, I don't remember the exact words, somebody will remind me, but it's something like the pulse of the planet, that Twitter is the pulse of the planet. And I think that's what they want it to be. And I say they, because I think Dorsey seems to be leaning into whatever it is Musk wants to get done.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, people like to put it in terms of free speech and suppressing ideas, but the reason that moderation became essential on Twitter and other social platforms has to do with things that aren't about ideas, but have to do with stalking, bullying, spreading lies, shouting at each other, uncivil speech. It becomes very easy in a social media network to just get online and tell people that you don't know that they're wrong, and that if you look at the higher, more civil layers of Twitter, you have very thoughtful people putting out thoughtful ideas, linking to articles. But down in the bowels, you have a whole bunch of idiots shouting at each other and ganging up on each other, abusing each other and harassing each other. So moderation is not about ideas. Moderation is about courtesy.
But then they would say, welcome to the human race. And you don't get to switch off things you don't like.
Well, if you look at it, if you use the public square as a metaphor for Twitter, you cannot behave however you want in the public square. You can't just run up to people and shout at them in their face. You can't go up and harass strangers in a public square. There are rules of behavior that are enforced not only by social convention, but by the law. If you want to make it a public square, you have to have behavior that's fitting for a public square.
I just want to, I'm the sheriff here. And if this gets into a free speech argument, I'm going to cut it off.
No, I'm saying it's not a free speech argument. I'm saying that Elon wants to make it one. It
gets that way.
But the whole deal with moderation has to do with behavior, not ideas.
But Michael, I think we can agree on this, that people can't break the law. As you said, in a public square, the police will come if you do something that's against the law, including anything that is causing grievous harm, blah, blah, blah. There's a long list of laws you can break that you'll get arrested for. And I think when Dorsey says he wants it to be the pulse of the human race, he says he thinks the law should be the arbiter, included. But so in other words, he doesn't even think that Twitter should stop people saying illegal things. He thinks the police and the state and the court should do that. Otherwise,
I think that's a specious argument, because you have an entirely new dynamic in an online forum for which laws do not yet exist. But we've seen people be terribly harassed on Twitter. And
so what?
So what? You're not one of those people. You're a white male. You're a white male heterosexual with some money in the bank.
And you could also say,
if you're a teenage you're now cut off. I'm not kidding. I'm cutting it off.
Okay.
This back and forth goes nowhere. We've been having this back and forth for months. There's a reason why we were on hiatus. This is that reason. Now, can we
Well, there is
please?
a but there is a reasonable
But
conversation.
there's no but about what I'm saying. What I'm saying
No,
is
that's fine.
I don't want to host
hearing you.
this discussion endlessly with no insight emerging from it for months.
No, I think there is
So
insight.
can you sidestep this particular disagreement and continue talking about something that might be new to us or the people watching? Can you?
No, I think you may think this is the same, and I'm totally happy to stop if you think it's the same. I think it's different, but I think there's a belief that feelings need to be protected. I don't think human beings should be parented by other human beings, and I think there are harsh words said. I was poor growing up. I got bullied at school. It kind of made me, to be honest. One of the reasons I'm strong is because of that. And I didn't want anyone's help. And I think this idea that smart people need to parent against ugly people who do bad things is itself, it's going back to, early Greek philosophy when Plato believed that only clever people could make decisions. And I don't think we collectively, including Michael, believe there should be some kind of an elite that
Keith, you're hanging up.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a good place for Michael to respond. Could you?
No, I'm going to just repeat what I said before, so I don't know if I should respond.
So he
I
characterized.
think
I have a
dynamics,
question.
the dynamics of an
question.
online forum are completely different from physical face-to-face.
So in other words, when
encounters.
Keith said that you would probably agree with something, you're saying no, you won't agree with that. Is that correct?
I'm saying that we're in a new realm, and I would agree with him in the old realm. Although I will say there are far too many young people committing suicide because of bullying. What is the alternative? They should just be a little tougher. If you have gay kids who are harassed at school and they take their lives because they don't see any clear way of living, what's the response? Too bad. You should have been stronger. You should have learned how to tough it out. I don't think that's the proper response.
Okay, so you're disagreeing.
I think that vulnerable people need to be protected. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I disagree. I think Plato is the wrong reference point. I think what we're looking at hasn't been improved since the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment idea was. Who said Madison said when he wrote the Constitution, he was building a machine that would run by itself. What he meant by that was that the system of checks and balances would serve all regulatory functions. And it kind of pretty much works that way with some exceptions. I think what we're looking at with social media, and I've said this before and it's not popular, but what we're looking at is a form of self-regulation, very much the same as the self-regulation that we have with doctors and lawyers and hairdressers and plumbers and lots of people in between. People have to demonstrate their bona fides and get a license. If we had a licensing structure for social media, we wouldn't have people running around as Mad Dog 432 insulting the world. When you got to tie your name to things, all of a sudden you become a lot more civil because you have to be, because people know where you go to school. So I'm not going to go into a long diatribe about this, but I think the essence of the way forward is through a modicum of regulation.
That's kind of like saying, maybe, that the way forward is to go back to where when rooms used to be moderated.
No.
And no, okay.
No, I'm saying self-moderation. I'm not saying some external big brother gets to moderate you. I'm saying, look, I just had a charging station put into my garage so I could charge my Tesla if and when it ever shows up. You know what? I hired an electrician, somebody who could pull a permit to work on my electrical system. And the only way he could pull a permit was because he was licensed. He had proven his bona fides so that my house doesn't burn down when I plug my car in. That's all we need.
Dennis,
We don't.
Dennis, let me ask you a question.
Okay, but when you're talking about something that requires skills, that's one thing. Everybody thinks that they can argue. Everybody thinks they can compose a tweet. Are you going to have to take a licensing exam to get on Twitter? Is that what you're saying?
No, as a matter of fact, I've written about this. I think there should be a 3-tiered license. I think if you want to, just like if I wanted to rewire a lamp, I would not call an electrician. I would do it myself. There should be that level for social media.
But Dennis, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I think Michael just asked a personal question, but let me put it in a different way so you address it directly. In discourse, the human race is at all different levels of education. Some people have poor vocabulary for no fault of their own. They didn't get the chances. They didn't go to good schools. Usually that's related to their economic level, how poor they are, but not always. Sometimes it's their race. Sometimes they've got learning difficulties. Are we saying that there shouldn't be a level playing field for discourse?
I'm saying there should be a level playing field for discourse. I'm saying that the level playing field does not include bullying and beating kids up metaphorically online because of the way they look or who they love or anything else. That you can make that distinction. It's cricket, okay? You don't apply the rules of baseball to cricket.
Well, what you're saying, I was talking to a friend yesterday. She told me she hasn't got a driver's license anymore because she got 20 points in Germany on her license, and now they take her license away because she got 20 points and she was whining that she was only doing 20 kilometers an hour faster than the speed limit, so it's not fair. But there were rules. I think you can have standards, but you can't, in a way, you can't impose them in discourse, because the minute you impose them, the distinction between somebody who is malicious and somebody who just doesn't know better is a very thin one. And you end up basically elevating the intellectual elite above everyone else.
I think you're not hearing what I'm saying.
So when you have ISIS beheading videos on Twitter, should they be left up? Should they be suppressed?
What I'm saying is that is the province of self-regulation. You go back a generation. I'm sorry, I'm not an electrician, but go back a generation, and we had fuses you could screw in instead of breakers. And if you didn't have a new fuse, some people would stick a dime or a penny in there because they were really good conductors, and that would burn down a house. An electrician, somebody with a license, somebody who's proved his or her bona fides, won't do that.
But how can you have a license?
And in most places, there's a second level, of course, because there's an inspector that has to come out and approve the work that has been done by the licensed electrician.
In theory,
but you can't do that in discourse, because what are the qualifications that you would be measuring against even?
Of course you could do it in discourse. I am not going to insult you. I'm not going to call you a this or that or another thing, because that's not appropriate for our discourse.
No, but
I'm self-censoring.
Jane, you ignorant slut. Remember that line?
Oh, exactly.
No, look, as a white heterosexual man, I don't believe that defines who I am. but people can say it does, and I have to persuade them they're wrong.
Well, I don't think it defines who you are, but it does define your level of vulnerability.
I
No,
think, yeah, I
but
think
I'm
so. I
vulnerable.
think
I'm
I mean,
vulnerable.
that's axiomatic. Why would you want to bother wasting your breath on that?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you can't, I don't know how to practically take what you said. My equivalent of what you said is the law. And so on the beheading one, the question is, we have a judiciary, an executive, and a legislative branch. Did they break a law? Have they been taken to court, and did the judiciary say they're criminal? That case, take it down.
That's level 2. That's
Right.
level 2. That's just like the tax code. The tax code's full of laws that get enforced by accountants. They're not officers of the courts or anything else. If you violate the law,
That's right. Yeah, no, I agree.
Then you go to court.
Well,
And
yes, but no, but
maybe the grand jury will ignore it. I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't get fined for being fraud on your taxes just because your accountant says fraud. You go to court and then they fine you for defrauding the taxes.
Actually, it's an administrative hearing in front of the IRS.
Well, there's a process. All I mean is there's a process.
Exactly. Are you telling me we can't?
Unless you're Boris Becker.
So I favor a process. I mean, this is probably where we agree. It's what the process is, maybe where we disagree. But I favor a process because I don't believe people should be able to do things which are not legal. And I don't approve, by the way, of lots of things that are legal. But I don't want to become the law myself to stop them. So I believe the law should take the cause here, and Twitter shouldn't be expected to be a proxy for the law. It's just a business.
I agree with 99%.
I think there is a rhythm and tempo issue.
All I'm saying is that if there should be law, it should be stuff that we can work out. Our elected representatives, or even us right here, or people who might have closed groups on Twitter, if you could imagine such a thing. Those are the rules of the road. You figure them out.
I think there's something surreal about trying to govern something that works at the speed of the internet through the courts and the law, and issuing writs and subpoenas and taking them into court and arguing about them. The old line, long before the internet, and it's maybe misattributed, but it's sometimes attributed to Mark Twain. A lie can get halfway around the world before the truth has finished lacing up its boots.
I agree with that.
There is no way that the law is physically able to operate in a timely manner to adjudicate online discussion.
That's not the purpose.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I do agree with that. I think the practicalities of the law reacting it would require the state to be modernized. That's the only way they could do it. They could apply artificial intelligence, by the way, to decide if the law is broken, but the state could do that.
It doesn't require that.
I agree with you that it's hard, but the big question for me is, if not the law, who? Because then do you say, we don't have the rule of law anymore? What do we have then? The rule of who?
Well,
it's not the purpose of the law to prevent crime actively. It is
one of the reasons.
Michael, let me just finish. It's the purpose of the law to number one, set the standards, and number two, use those standards in criminal prosecution. Now, can people violate the law and get away with it? Yeah, short term, no problem. But it doesn't mean that somebody's not going to knock at their door with a subpoena.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the reasons why Musk is talking about some form of subscriber basis, because other than the law, there's a question of what kind of an environment are advertisers comfortable putting their ads in. In the early days of television, there were standards and practices departments that exercised strict censorship over what went out over the airs, aside from FCC regulations, because they were trying to preserve a certain kind of advertising environment. YouTube, for example, did a lot of internal regulation of content for that reason, because advertisers were pulling back. So there's a business reason for a platform, if they use advertising as their business model, to try and keep conversation within certain bounds. Otherwise, they won't get their income.
You're exactly right. I totally agree with you. I think what you've just described and I thought of this earlier, is a backdoor to regulation. It's self-imposed. And it's like pushing against the wall. The wall only pushes back as hard as you push on it.
You know, it's interesting in the UK, and I'm troubled by this. I don't know where I stand on it, but in the UK, there's a new law which Frank will know all about, which is attempting to make government rules and laws that cover all this stuff. What's it called, Frank? The Digital Something Act.
It's funny. That's exactly what I call it. The Digital Something Act.
So on the one hand, the government is intervening. And despite what I've just argued here, I do have a level of discomfort due to the fact that we see things in Russia and China with the government becoming the judge of content. That said, I even have more trouble with Twitter becoming the judge of content. And so in America, we don't yet do what the UK looks like it's going to do. And
the Digital Economy Act, by the way, it's
right. And the EU also did something last week. So you've got this kind of moment in history where governments are anyway going to start having opinions, if even maybe not in the USA, but everywhere else for sure, and already have in China and Russia, where it's very aggressive, obviously. And the tech to enable them to do that is getting better and better and better. Like in the UK, every single number plate on every single road they have in their system, for example. So I think there is a kind of a really awkward moment in history where tech is going to enable surveillance and decision making, and even probably implementation, and certainly criminal prosecutions. And you just wonder how far that goes before we even feel uncomfortable with that.
Well, you could argue that the UK is way ahead on that.
Well, you know, the Biden administration announced something that is hard to understand, because I don't think it's been clearly defined yet. But of course, the right wing is all over it at this point, and that's called the Disinformation Governance Board, which will be part of the Department of Homeland Security, to try and deal with disinformation about something or other, Russian disinformation, who knows? So the government is getting involved in some level, but it's hard for me to comment on it because I don't understand exactly what they're doing, except that they have a kind of frightening title, the Disinformation Governance Board.
Brent,
Well,
Brent, can I hear from Brent just a little bit? Any thoughts come to mind?
No. Oh, not at the moment.
That definitely isn't true. It's just he doesn't want to say whatever they are.
No.
Well,
Oh, wait, let him finish. Not
Oh,
saying.
I'm done. I mean, it's interesting.
You think we're wasting our time?
I don't know if it's
No,
wasting
no.
your time. I don't think it's that. I just think it's a circular conversation that I don't see an end to at this point. Not to say that it's not a good discussion, but it could be a good but endless discussion, because I don't know how you. I mean, you have, let's say, the democratic ways. You have, Twitter. It's a public company. It has shareholders. It has users. And for the most part, in order for something like a decision to have somebody thrown off, Twitter, it takes more than one person. And if there's any big dramatic change that needs to take place, it's probably going to be an uphill struggle for it to happen if it's not just one singular entity person being able to make the call on their own. And that could be it could be a good thing, but it also could be a bad thing if that singular entity, and it's not just about about Musk. It's about any one individual who would have enough power to do something to a channel that is hundreds of millions of people really depend on uh, every day. I don't I don't like if any one person has enough power to make a change that is significant enough that could impact hundreds of millions of people. I don't like it if it's somebody who I might like or think really highly of, because eventually that person may have a bad day or may have a bad decision or make a bad call. And unfortunately, in today's world, all it takes is one split decision to make a bad call that could have a ripple effect that you can't pull back. So that's why I've been hesitant all along. I mean, I think the dude is brilliant. I think he's done some really good stuff. I think he's a little bit nutty. And well, I guess when you have $240 billion or whatever, you're not crazy, you're eccentric. So, I mean, I wouldn't want Bill Gates to have that, certain amount of power over things that are, that significant in terms of communications. Although the dude has done really great things, like, gotten rid of certain kind of, viruses or plagues or whatever you have. But it's just hard for me to, to think of just the positive impact of somebody who could make the call, who has done really great things in the past, and who, maybe in the foreseeable future, you can't see that person doing something that could have such a negative impact, but I can see it. And so that's why I'm not, I don't know where to go with this.
Well, the only place beyond the individual is democracy itself. And democracy is three branches of government. And if they're not in control, then the next level is boards of directors, shareholders, and CEOs who have got way less credibility than democracy. So, you would think that democracy is the most trustworthy platform to determine the outcomes here, not companies. And that goes for Musk or for the other regime before him. So I almost wouldn't want to choose between them, because I think you're right, Brent, that the minute it's individuals and it's about trust, well, who knows what the outcome is going to be, because individuals can change.
And we know how trying to run a democracy like a company worked.
Yeah, Murdoch, had huge power, but is there a difference between Murdoch? Murdoch was still subject to the law. He got sued lots, and he couldn't publish things that were illegal. So he was subject to the law, but as long as he didn't break the law, he could publish whatever he wanted.
Yeah. And then he put somebody who broke the law in charge of his new network in the UK.
Yeah. But I think we probably will all agree it is not a good idea to give individuals power over discourse.
Unless there is checks and balances in place.
Yeah.
Well, eventually there are checks and balances. Twitter, I mean, three things could happen. The product could be essentially the product we know. It could be vastly improved, or it could be vastly degraded. And the customer base and the audience base and the advertiser base will make decisions depending on what happens.
That's why I don't think that there's going to be any precipitous movement right at the very beginning.
Or
I
any
think
any other time.
Yeah. But the other question,
the idea, what I push back on Brent's, comments is not on Brent or his ideas, but the distinction between if it's not about Musk, it is about Musk. It's about somebody who has gotten to a point where he can make a decision that will have the impact that we are concerned about in the abstract, if that makes any sense.
Well, you can look at a couple of parallels. There was
Wait,
Bezos.
let me, I haven't said a whole lot on this show, so don't interrupt me, please.
I thought you had concluded.
No, I haven't. I just
All right.
paused for air. I don't think that Musk, I'm agreeing with Frank here. I don't think that Musk has the power to make precipitous and drastic change. From his ramblings on Twitter, as potentially bizarre or insightful as they are, he doesn't think that he has that power. He thinks he has the power to influence his position in the universe. And I think he's right about that.
Mhm.
So what he's basically saying at this point, and that may change as we talked about earlier with the vote, what he's saying is he wants to take the Twitter private. So Keith's and Michael's and everybody's discussion on this point of is a company a living, breathing entity?
Yes.
Does it have rights? All
Mitt
those
Romney
kinds of
says so.
questions. What?
Mitt Romney says that.
Well, I mean, if we take Citizens United at face value, then everything, if there's money attached, has power. So what I guess I'm trying to say is I don't believe that that's a bad idea to take a company private, because that's one of a range of options that happen in the marketplace.
Mhm.
And there's nobody who's going to stand up and say, nope, that's illegal. You can't do that.
Mhm.
So it's gonna move forward.
No, yeah, that's probably right.
Okay, so it moves forward. At that point, the question is, does a private entity have the right to be treated as an individual?
I think that's a fantastic question, and
I'm still not done.
Oh, sorry.
if-
You were posing a question for us.
Yeah, I know, but we've got unlimited airtime here.
More pause.
If that's the question, Musk's ramblings have suggested every time he talks about this issue, he says within the law.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, he's been trained or has trained his lawyers to insert that phrase. He never says anything without that caveat. And I think that is an avenue through which Dennis's idea of self-regulation can flow. Doesn't mean it will, but it could. And I think that, I'm less worried about Elon Musk trying to exert power over the United States Congress, because, basically the Congress will do everything it can to not do anything. So the status quo will be preserved for the most part for some time to come, which is, I think, what Frank's comment was. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay. Now I'm pretty much done.
So what I wanted to say is that this thing about the individual, I think we've always agreed on this show that companies do have the right. In the pre-Musk era, that was a big conversation as well. Companies are companies; they can set rules, just like golf clubs can, and you can like them or hate them. So they do have the right. that in a funny way, the people who argued that in the pre-Musk era, it's an inconvenient truth in the post-Musk era, because that means he can do what he wants as well. Now, that said, even the individual who takes a company private and is the sole shareholder and has the right to determine its policies and so on, is still subject to democracy. And by democracy, I include the judiciary. And therefore, there are constraints on them. Now, the interesting thing with the UK government stuff is it raises the question, is democracy turning into autocracy? Because the UK government wants the kind of rights that the Chinese government has. And at that point, is democracy legitimate gets raised. And that's when it gets super interesting, because what do you do then? You know, if the law starts to ask the human race or nations to agree to rules which are essentially undemocratic, what then? And
So,
I think in the UK, that question's now there. Everyone I met today is talking about it here, all the British people, where they're very concerned that it's basically an attack on civil liberties.
well, but they're using the economic impact of those things to sort of to be the big ball that the UK is heading towards, don't you think? Isn't that it's about the money?
I think we're talking about two different acts, Frank. There's an act.
I just have to interrupt again. I don't understand why you're talking about this and the future when when everybody is concerned about the present.
Well, I am as well. This UK law is the present, and
Yeah, but that's-
Musk is the present.
But you're describing the impact of democracy under attack by autocracy. Okay, now can we get back to what we were talking about? Is what my point would be. I understand that you can.
You understand the relationship? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I see the point. I see what Frank was talking about. Does anybody have a suggestion as to how we wind this up?
We could talk about the correspondence dinner.
Anybody else?
Good chicken.
Yeah, I don't think Trevor Noah is funny. So
What about I find some interest in this, what's going on with the streaming stuff and how Hulu grabbed Schitt's Creek and Netflix is getting killed,
Creamed.
and Apple is starting to become a significant player, especially if they get NFL football like it looks like they're going to get. It's pretty amazing what's going on with all this streaming stuff.
Boy, and I will say that Paramount and Disney have made huge leaps forward, and it's all about their content. In the end, it's all about the content. I find interesting that I see that's the online safety bill. I know I do know that's the one you're talking about, Keith. It's about the content, and I think it's also interesting that a lot of these companies are starting to talk about moving away from the binging aspect of their releases and getting more towards the way it was back in the day when you had to have appointment television. You knew that show was coming on at 4:00 in the afternoon on Saturday. Right now, I find myself my favorite shows are all non-binged until they've aired the first time. Then you can go back and start to binge them. I think that's an interesting move. Plus, then there's also the talk about not releasing feature films in sync with on the stream, which is a way to make sure that the movie theaters don't go down the tube. There's a lot of streaming stories happening out there.
One thing we haven't talked about is the free market aspect. We've been heavy on democracy, but the ultimate democracy is the free market. It's people who vote with their feet. And I'm not saying it's a trend. least not yet, but a lot of people have been quitting Twitter in the last couple of weeks. And every aspect of every market we're talking about, if it's streaming or something else, is ultimately a free market. It's a place where people go and spend their money if they think they're getting value.
Yeah.
I also think it's the competition is getting just more ruthless. I think that was the big thing with Netflix. I mean, every year it seems like they increase the prices, and every 3 months. And I think it's also why CNN Plus was didn't get off the ground. The competition is tough, man. If you expect people to pay $5, $6, $10 a month, I started counting out how many of these things do I have already, and it's like I think I'm probably paying way more than when I actually had cable. at this point.
Absolutely. Me too. Same thing.
Yeah,
I added it.
that goes around to something that was said earlier about newsletters. Basically, to me, the drivers of the Netflix collapse are HBO Max and Apple TV Plus, because they both declare a value proposition where in my mind, what are we going to watch tonight? It used to be, well, there's nothing on Netflix. Now it's, well, there might be something on because there's some competition in play. HBO Max represents, the intersection of advertising, whatever the acronym is, Frank.
ASVM or something.
Yeah. It represents
AVODs and fasts.
It represents that economic power that is on the way. As people, you see this in the newsletter environment where people have various strategies to get people to subscribe, but they also have this public facing model, which is they're not trying to get your money, they're trying to get your attention. And
which means that leads to more money, actually.
yeah, of course. I mean, it's all about the money at some point, because these are economic, this is a marketplace.
It costs a lot of money to make the content.
So what's going on with HBO Max, I think, is super significant. And there are some other, entities that are trying to draft off of that. And you see the market. If I was watching CNBC a lot the last week, just because I was fed up with the other choices. And,
aren't you fed up with what CNBC is reporting? I sure am.
Of course, it's a bloodbath. But
there's another part of the dynamic which has to do with saturation. So when you have Netflix has all the subscribers to begin with, and very high saturation, they don't have a lot of upside except to raise their prices. Whereas newer, smaller services do have more upside because they're not as saturated. So Apple still has a lot of subscriber growth ahead of it potentially, and HBO still has a lot of subscriber growth potentially ahead of it.
But the coin,
and at the end of the day, may I finish?
I don't know.
Well, at the end of the day, as you said, and I think as Brent said, there are some ceilings because people have only so much attention, only so much budget, only so much time. So as the newer players attract new time, new attention, and new subscribers, it has to come out of somewhere. And it's going to come out of the top. It's going to come out of Netflix.
I think Netflix.
I still think Netflix still has tremendous global advantages and will probably get back to a rapid growth curve. I don't think this quarter's results are going to be a trend. I think it's
I agree with both of you. What I'm saying is that the coin of the realm here is look, we saw a show called Slow Horses.
Love it.
Fantastic show. Mick Jagger steps out from the shadow of Keith Richards. It's amazing. It's historic. It really is.
Yeah.
And what they're doing, Apple TV Plus, is they're duplicating the Netflix equation. As we've talked about on the show before, the rise of international smaller series like Call My Agent, and all of these things which we never would have thought would be the value proposition turn out to be Netflix's value proposition.
Yeah.
And there are competitors now for that attention in the marketplace. So I agree with you, Michael. It's definitely it's definitely about the numbers and the saturation point for Netflix. For everybody else, it's about what parts of the Netflix equation can they join in and boost their possibilities.
Right. And I think you bring up another
Hang on,
They
point of
wanted to say
limit.
goodbye
Yes.
to
Go,
Keith.
just say one thing. I have to go.
I want to
just
wave
wanna-
off. I want to wave off Keith and Dennis, who have to leave right now. Thank you both, Keith and Dennis.
Thank you.
And
Have a
I-
good
and I-
week.
And thank you to the whole of the gang for what I think was a very thoughtful conversation.
I think so too. Thank you so much. Thank you much for being here, making the time.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Okay, continue, please, Michael.
I think you raised another limit. There's limits to the number of subscribers and the amount of attention and the amount of subscribing budget you have. There's also a limit in the amount of talent for creating content, and that's another point of competition. Netflix started out just throwing money at the world, and I think that's one of the things that they're going to have to change to make their numbers solve. Apple has been, I've been told from someone who has some insight into it, has been much more careful about being a little tight-fisted in production money.
Well, I think that's the issue that Netflix is going to really bump up against. I think I saw where Apple the last quarter, the profit was 25 billion in the last quarter. They don't depend on Apple Plus. I mean, whatever it's called. It's like, it's a thing that they can do. I mean, they can start throwing huge amounts of money at this. Netflix is dependent on this. Amazon is the same thing. I mean, so I think Netflix might be a little rough sailing. Both Apple and Amazon are getting live sports. Well, Amazon already has it, but live sports is a huge driver in appointment TV. I mean, Netflix doesn't have that. I think, like you said, there's going to be more money. I mean, the fact that Schitt's Creek, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way.
Yeah.
Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, that's part of the joke.
Yeah. I think Netflix is kind of getting left up Schitt's Creek because now they got outdone by Hulu. The competitive landscape for Netflix has never been tougher because there's bigger pockets coming in that don't depend on that. They don't offer ads. I know they've been fighting that for a while. I mean, so there's all these components that Netflix is missing, and it's only going to get tougher, I think. And I think the other thing, when you mentioned about the content, I think it's going to be not just the amount of money being thrown, it's going to be the distribution of it that's going to be changing. So all these things, I think, with the Apples and the Amazons and the other companies that aren't, technology companies that aren't dependent on, the revenue coming from this streaming service, they're going to make it really hard for Netflix.
Yeah,
forward.
although I would suggest to you that if you look at the most recent Apple results and their public statements about it, it's increasingly the services that are going to be the differentiator for Apple. It's not something that they're going to be able to hide behind, given the supply chain problems that they're having with various hardware. That this world of streaming, I think, is going to have a huge impact on Apple.
I think it will eventually, but put it in the context. What is it like? 95% of their revenue comes from product selling. Phones,
Well, you had
the
a show
refresh.
which I enjoyed yesterday, watching Amazon with the amazing John Calder
That was
eyes.
Friday, not Saturday.
Whenever it was.
Please don't ever say amazing Colder Ice.
Yeah, well,
Ever
that's
to
your
me
problem to
again.
deal with, not mine. That was a great show because, the results with Amazon, what was it, 14% loss?
They lost
Did they?
4 billion last quarter.
Yeah. So what was that about?
They lost. They actually most of that or all of that was really writing down their investment in Rivian, which was $8 billion.
That's closing all their retail stores. Is that what you're talking about?
No, they made an investment in electric vehicle company Rivian, and the stock price of that company is down like 69% or something like that. So they just wrote it off.
And so you think that's why Amazon had its worst day in history?
No, it was the forward estimates for the next quarter in terms of they weren't going to hit their retail numbers that they originally put out.
And that's related to what the
Part of it is
so-called,
inflation.
Change of the pandemic buying.
Oh
So
yeah, that
buying up.
absolutely. Well, people, I don't know why people thought this, but so there's the pre-pandemic growth that Amazon was having. It's about 9 or 10% annually. I mean, overall, some parts of it were going fast. Like AWS is growing like at 36-40%, but the overall trajectory during the pandemic, they went up to like 20% growth. I mean, a company as big as Amazon, that's huge. So now that we're kind of getting past the pandemic, they're getting out and doing things like, shopping in stores again at higher rate. And so all of a sudden that during the pandemic, 20% growth rate is now slowed down to like 7%, and people lost their minds.
Yeah. You know what? I'm still pandemic buying. I got to go.
Oh, shoot.
I am still pandemic buying.
kinda
Matter of
late.
fact, I just bought an air fryer today on Amazon, for God's sakes. I could have gone to a store and bought it. I didn't.
Frank,
Okay.
hang on just for a second, because I really did want to ask you about CNN Plus. So
Who?
the implosion was just due to a bad concept, or
No.
I don't know that it was due to not having enough talent.
No.
Maybe. What's your take on really the and the quickness of this was just like head spinning. I mean, oh my gosh! Before
my opinion of this is that they pushed it so that it would get on the air before the new owners took over, and the new owners didn't have it in their business plan the way that CNN did, and so they cut their losses. And I think it was that simple. And look, you could argue that it was bad marketing. Nah, it wasn't the only reason. You could argue that they didn't have an identity. Nah, that wasn't the only reason. A lot of it had to do with the fact that Zucker wanted it to get done. Keelar wasn't able to stop it from getting done. And the only person that did was Zaslav, and he said, "That's it, bye bye." And that's the only way it could have happened that fast.
And can I also ask you why?
That's my opinion, by the way.
I think it's more than your opinion. I think there's been some reporting on it. There've been a couple of backstage stories about it, because I mean the new owners needed to cut costs. This was the easiest, quickest, biggest chunk that they could take out of costs. And it's also, when you take over a company, you always want to assert some dominance. This is a big play. Say, look, you tried to sneak this through before we actually had corporate governance over this project. Sorry, we're going to kill it.
I do think
if we could have killed it in advance, we would have, but we couldn't because we didn't own you yet.
I do think that the idea of this Uber streamer that includes all of the different parts of that company into that stream some of which will be AVOD, some of it will be fast, some of it will be SVOD, but it'll all be under a roof, is a direction that I think streaming could go. I actually, look, this is pie in the sky thought process on my part, but get rid of all subscriptions, get rid of all brands, make people say that this is what I want to watch, call it up, immediately get it on your screen, and you are automatically charged for it, or you have to watch ads. That's sort of like the Uber end of what streaming could become. I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think the companies would ever let that happen.
Tina, last question since Frank has to leave.
Yeah, Frank. And so the talent that CNN did acquire and hire, are they released, or are they tied up? Or
no, some they're tied up, but they're tied up in such a way that they can be released. And so it's the only one for sure that I know of that got a show is Chris Wallace. There are really good people like Casey Hunt. I have no idea what's going to happen to her. I don't know what's going to I do think, though, that the shows that aren't really hard news oriented, that didn't really fit in with what CNN Prime is, the cooking show or the travel shows or those kinds of things, I think they actually live on the Discovery site, which will become a part of whatever becomes this Discovery Warner Brothers
Disco Brothers
CNN site. Disco Bros is what it is. Disco Bros.
All right, Frank, thank you. And
thank you, guys. Good
all
show.
right, let's just around the remaining table.
I'm not going to be there for the remaining table.
I understand that.
Bye.
That's why I said bye.
Okay, bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
He's going to the dinner table right now.
Yeah.
He's leaving the building.
Okay, thank you. Michael, last thoughts.
We're talking about streaming and Apple. New book just out called After Steve, How Apple Became a $1 trillion company and Lost Its Soul by Trip Mickle. There's an excerpt from it in the Sunday New York Times. It really seems to be a gripe from Johnny Ive, talking about how services is now a more important part of Apple and how Apple has moved away from hardware. The notion that Apple lost its soul by making this pivot to services is a little far-fetched to me. And I think it's mainly Johnny Ive griping.
Yeah, I don't think it's a pivot at all. I think that the way they're doing Apple TV Plus, it feels like an Apple product.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that the iTunes store started under Steve. It's not a completely new direction. It's an expansion of things that Steve started, but it's
Mark
just
Benioff,
it's not slick hardware design.
Mark Benioff famously gave the URL back to Apple for the Apple Store.
What URL?
I forget what it was. It's a famous story.
They had the appstore.com.
Yeah, something like that. And Brent, last thoughts.
Warriors are about to start, so.
And that's is that basketball?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh, good.
Yes, it is.
All right, Tina, last thoughts.
No, good show. I mean, I'm glad that we kind of bowled past some of the, personality stuff, although I still think that some of that is relevant in the Twitter discussion.
Well, Keith, I didn't realize that you wanted to start this up again.
Not starting anything up again. And my name is Tina.
Look at the time.
But I appreciated the conversation, and I felt it was kind of a deep one.
I want to thank all those who have moved on to other Sunday pursuits. I want to thank Michael Markman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I want to thank Brent Leary. What does that say?
Rams.
Los Angeles and curses.
Why would it be any different, Steve?
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
to
Come on.
I want to thank our producer, Tina Chase Gillmor.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I want to thank myself for putting up with all of this. It's great to be back.
I was wondering when you're going to do that because
I was just going to ask you, is it good to be back? Did you miss it?
I did not miss it.
You enjoyed the hiatus.
I enjoyed it more than you can imagine. Sitting there watching my granddaughter grow up was a much better show, but this was a good one.
Okay.
And I congratulate all of us for working hard.
All right.
Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's deuces. That's out.
I'm going to stop.